I worked the front desk at a shipping warehouse in Hamburg, Germany. This American walked in wearing a polo that said management material and asked when shifts started. I told him we had union delegates starting at 7 to meet with the morning crew about contract negotiations. He laughed and said, "Oh, perfect. I can watch the troublemakers get fired." I stared at him. He kept smiling. "You're joking," I said. He shook his head and explained that back home, union organizers usually get let go within a month because they create division in the workplace. I told him our delegates were elected by workers and had legal protections. He said, "Well, that's your problem right there. You're letting the inmates run the asylum." The delegates arrived, shook hands with management, and everyone sat down with coffee. He watched through the glass, looking genuinely confused, and whispered, "Why isn't anyone getting written up?" Our operations manager heard him and just walked away shaking her head. My cousin manages a hotel in Copenhagen. An American guest came down for breakfast and noticed the staff chatting in the corner. He marched over to complain that the help shouldn't be standing around gossiping. My cousin explained they were union representatives discussing safety concerns from last week. He said, "You mean you pay them to complain about you?" She said they had a legal right to meet during work hours. He told her this was exactly why American businesses thrived, because we don't subsidize whining. She pointed out Denmark consistently ranked higher in worker productivity and satisfaction. He said those surveys were probably conducted by unions. I'm a warehouse supervisor in Rotterdam. This American started last month, and within 2 weeks asked when we'd be clearing out the union people. I asked what he meant. He said, "You know, the agitators, the ones who keep talking about contracts and rights." I explained that 87% of our staff were union members, including me. He stepped back, like I'd announced I had a contagious disease. "Your management," he said. I told him Dutch law protects union activity, regardless of position. He said that explains why everything moves so slow here then. Proceeded to describe his previous job where they'd hold union awareness sessions teaching workers why organizing was against their own interests. I asked how that worked out. He said turnover hit 90% within 8 months, but at least nobody was making demands. My sister runs an accounting firm in Stockholm. She hired an American who seemed sharp until his 3rd day, when he pulled her aside during a union meeting. He whispered, "I think someone's recording us for a lawsuit." She asked why he'd think that. He pointed at the union delegate taking notes and said back home when someone documents management conversations, "It's because they're building a case." She explained the notes were standard meeting minutes that got distributed to all staff. He said, "You want employees to have written evidence of what you say?" She showed him the legal requirement to keep transparent records of all workplace discussions involving rights. He spent the rest of the meeting silent and afterwards asked if she needed him to handle the delegate quietly. She told him to take the rest of the day off. I'm a line supervisor at a manufacturing plant in Lyon. An American transfer joined us, and I immediately started what he called team building. By taking certain workers to lunch, while excluding our union representatives, I called him in and asked what he was doing. He said, "Just getting to know the good ones, the people who actually want to work." I told him he couldn't exclude staff based on union status. He said, "I'm not excluding them. I'm just choosing not to associate with people who might cause problems." I explained French law prohibited any discrimination or retaliation based on union membership. He argued, "It's not retaliation, it's strategic relationship management." I showed him the legal guidelines. He said, "This is why French productivity suffers. You can't even pick your own lunch partners." Our union rep later filed a formal complaint, and he spent 2 months in mandatory sensitivity training. My brother works for a telecom company in Vienna. They hired an American manager who called an all-staff meeting his 2nd week. He announced a new initiative for workplace excellence. That included a voluntary program where employees could earn bonuses by reporting concerning behavior. Someone asked what that meant. He said, "You know, people who spend too much time talking about contracts instead of working. Folks who seem overly focused on rights instead of responsibilities." Our union delegate stood up and said that sounded like he wanted people to inform on union activity. He said, "I never said union, I said concerning behavior. Totally different." The delegate pointed out Austrian law explicitly protected union organizing during work hours. He responded, "Well, Maybe that's why Austria isn't a global powerhouse. He was reassigned to a non-supervisory role within 3 days. I manage a logistics center in Brussels. An American consultant arrived to optimize operations and spent his first week interviewing staff. He came to me with a list of 12 names and said these were higher-risk employees we should transition out. I looked at the list. Every single person was a union representative. I asked him to explain his criteria. He said they all admitted to spending work time on non-work activities. I told him union business during work hours was protected by Belgian law. He said protected. These people are literally telling you they're not doing their jobs and you're protecting them. I explained that union delegates had a legal right to paid time for representative duties. He said in America we'd call that theft of company time. I told him in Belgium we called it democracy. He submitted his final report recommending we restructure to eliminate representative redundancy and was politely thanked and not invited back. I work for a pharmaceutical company in Oslo. An American executive visited our Norwegian office and sat in on a union negotiation session. Afterwards, he pulled me aside and said, "I counted 17 demands in that meeting. How are you not just laughing at them?" I said we took worker concerns seriously. He said, "But they're demanding shorter hours and more pay and better benefits. They can't have everything." I explained Norwegian labor law encouraged strong unions because satisfied workers were productive workers. He said back home, we have a saying, you get what you negotiate, not what you demand. I pointed out our workers just negotiated all 17 points into the new contract. He said, well, yeah, but that's because you rolled over. If you'd held firm, they'd have backed down. Our productivity metrics were shared in the next quarterly meeting, showing we led the company globally. He didn't attend. My uncle owns a restaurant in Melbourne. An American investor came by interested in franchising the concept. During the tour, he noticed our union delegates' contact information posted by the staff room and said you might want to take that down before the health inspector sees it. My uncle asked why a health inspector would care. The investor said because it signals poor management control, like you're inviting problems. My uncle explained Australian law required us to display union information. The investor said required. That's insane. It's your business. You should decide what goes on your walls. My uncle showed him the Fair Work Commission guidelines. He said, this is exactly why Australian restaurants struggle. You're literally advertising how to sue you. Our restaurant had been profitable for 11 years. I'm a cafe manager in Wellington. We hired an American barista who seemed great until she noticed our union representative's photo on the staff board. She asked, why do you have a picture of someone who doesn't even work here? I said he worked Tuesday through Saturday. She said, no, I mean, why display someone who's obviously causing trouble? I explained he was our democratically elected union delegate. She said, you vote for someone to complain about you. That's wild. I told her New Zealand law gave workers the right to union representation and delegates had protected status. She said protected from what? Doing their actual job? I explained they did their job plus represented worker interests. She said in America, we just call HR if we have a problem. She lasted 6 weeks before moving to a different city. My cousin manages a catering company in São Paulo. An American client hired us for a corporate event and asked to review our staff list beforehand. She circled 5 names and said we'd prefer if these specific people didn't work our event. My cousin asked why. She said, our research shows they're union members and we don't want any incidents. My cousin explained Brazilian law prohibited discrimination based on union status. The client said it's not discrimination, it's preference. We're paying, so we get to choose. My cousin told her every single person on the catering team was union affiliated because that's how Brazilian labor worked. The client said all of them? How do you get anything done? The event went flawlessly, and she complained afterwards that nobody seemed oppressed. Enough to work hard. I work for a hotel chain in Buenos Aires. An American regional manager visited and attended our monthly union liaison meeting. He spent the entire hour shifting in his seat and afterwards said that was the most unproductive thing I've ever witnessed. I asked what he meant. He said you spent 60 minutes listening to complaints about shift schedules, break room temperatures, and parking spaces. I said those were legitimate workplace concerns. He said, they're trivial nonsense, and the fact that you pay people to whine about parking is insane. I explained Argentine law mandated regular union consultations on workplace conditions. He said mandated. You don't even have a choice. He submitted a report, recommending we streamline communication channels by eliminating redundant complaint sessions. Corporate reminded him that those sessions were legally required and union negotiated. I'm a metro supervisor in Tokyo. An American transfer joined our operations. Tiemann was shocked to learn our union organized the annual safety conference. He said, shouldn't management run safety training? I explained our enterprise union collaborated with management on all major initiatives. He said, so the workers tell you what to do. I told him Japanese unions worked within company structures for mutual benefit. He said that sounds like the inmates running the prison with extra steps. The conference had reduced accidents by 40% over 5 years. He said, sure, but at what cost? They probably demand raises every time someone doesn't get hurt. Our union had actually negotiated stable long-term contracts that kept the system running efficiently. He requested a transfer back to the American office within 4 months. My brother-in-law works for a shipping company in Busan. They hired an American logistics coordinator who kept asking why nobody just fired the union guys. The operations manager explained Korean law made it nearly impossible to fire workers for union activity. He said so they can just say whatever they want and you can't do anything. The manager said they could address legitimate performance issues but not union membership. He said back home we don't even let unions form, we just make everyone sign papers saying they're happy. The manager asked how that worked. He said great until everyone quits and you're training new people every 3 months. But hey, at least nobody's organizing. He lasted 8 weeks before the union filed a formal complaint about his hostile workplace observations, and he was reassigned to a different region. I manage a bus depot in Auckland. An American maintenance supervisor started and immediately suggested we reward the quiet ones. I asked what that meant. He said the people who just do their jobs without joining committees and making demands. I told him our union delegates were elected by their peers. He said, yeah, but you could give bonuses to non-members to incentivize the right behavior. I explained that would violate New Zealand's Employment Relations Act. He said, violate? I'm trying to recognize good workers. I told him recognizing workers while punishing union membership was textbook discrimination. He said everything's illegal here. No wonder nobody wants to work hard. Our depot had the highest satisfaction ratings in the region. My sister works for a rail company in Johannesburg. An American consultant arrived to review operations and within days suggested restructuring away from union dependency. Management asked what he meant. He said, you've got 17 union representatives across a staff of 200. It's an 8.5% overhead just for complaining. They explained South African law protected union organizing. He said, protected, sure, but you don't have to encourage it. They asked how they were encouraging it. He said by letting them have offices, meeting spaces, and paid time off for union business. They showed him the legal requirements. He said, legal requirements to help people organize against you. This country's wild. He submitted a report calling our labor practices structurally inefficient, then flew back to the States. I'm a freight coordinator in Vancouver. We hired an American who asked on day 3 why we tolerated our union rep. I said tolerated was a strong word. He said the guy literally walked into your office yesterday and handed you a list of demands. I explained those were proposals for the next contract negotiation. He said demands. Proposals? Same thing. He's telling you what to pay him. Told him Canadian labor law encouraged collective bargaining. He said encouraged. You mean forced? I showed him the decades of stable labor relations we'd maintained. He said, stable because you keep giving in, I bet. Our contract negotiations typically concluded in 2 meetings with mutual satisfaction. He said that's not negotiating. That's surrendering with paperwork. He requested a transfer to our Seattle office within 2 months. I run a textile factory in Porto. An American quality inspector spent 3 months with us. On his last day, said, "I finally figured out why European companies can't compete." I asked him to elaborate. He said, "You're legally required to negotiate with people whose job is to make your life harder." I told him our union had helped us improve safety standards, reduce turnover, and increase productivity. He said, "Sure, but imagine how much more you could do if you just didn't have to deal with them." I asked him how American manufacturing was doing. He got quiet. Our factory had operated profitably for 36 years with the same union partnership. He flew home saying he'd never seen anything like it and hoped he never would again.